Hello, today is Wednesday, February 12th. Welcome to episode 413 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Deputy Director Martha Miller. I'm joined today by NSI Advisory Board member Lester Bunson and NSI Senior Fellows Morgan Vina and Jess Jones. The Gaza crisis has intensified, with Donald Trump issuing a stern ultimatum to Hamas. Release all remaining hostages by noon this Saturday or face the end of the ceasefire and resumption of full-scale military operations. This declaration was made before meeting with Jordan's King Abdullah at the White House, where he reiterated this stance. Trump also threatened to withhold U.S. aid from Jordan and Egypt if they refused to accept displaced Palestinians from Gaza. However, during his Tuesday meeting with King Abdullah, he appeared to soften his stance, praising the king's offer to take 2,000 sick Palestinian children while waiting for Egypt's broader proposal on Gaza's future. Team, let's just jump in. Morgan, with Arab nations like Jordan and Egypt, rejecting this idea of mass displacement, what role do you see for U.S. allies in addressing the Palestinian humanitarian crisis? Is Trump's suggestion to them reasonable?
So, Martha, Trump wants to see results here, and he thinks he can get them. And what we're seeing right now with Trump issuing this ultimatum, with his announcement the other week talking about, the creation, the U.S. creation of a Gaza Riviera, this is a huge motivating factor for Arab states to get off their butts and actually find a solution to this crisis. They, as we've seen, have wholeheartedly rejected the displacement of Palestinians, moving them into Egypt, into Jordan. But this has been, if anything, this sort of panic that has stricken them has, I think, caused them to actually explore other opportunities to find a resolution to this crisis here. We've seen, I think 3 recent hostages that have been released from Hamas. They have been in pretty it's pretty horrible to see their deterioration over the past 500 days, and Trump is just sort of saying, okay, that's it, we're done, this needs to be wrapped up, and we need to move on, and we need to see results here, because this process is just moving too slow for my liking. So overall, the United States has given billions of dollars to our Middle Eastern partners, particularly Egypt and Jordan, in the form of foreign military sales, development assistance, humanitarian assistance. Now is the time for Trump to really put pressure on them to say, hey, listen, we've been a really good partner to you over the years. Do something about it. We've got the leverage here, and if you don't do something about it, I will.
Mm-hmm. And Lester, what do you think? Some people would argue that Trump's proposal to relocate Palestinians actually relieves pressure on Arab states. Does this put them in a stronger long-term position?
Yeah, first of all, amazingly, I agree with Morgan on the substance here. I would phrase it differently. I would say Trump is doing Sunni Arab leaders a huge favor by redefining the debate. The situation on the ground has totally changed in the last couple of months. Iran is on its back foot. Its proxy forces are either decimated or in the process of giving up. Syria has changed completely, and the Sunni Arabs are now going in and largely much more in control of Syria than they were previously. So the dynamic on the ground is very different than it was at in the last days of the Biden administration. Trump recognizes this. He's giving them a window to act differently with respect to the situation in Gaza and with the Palestinians. I don't think the things he's describing are actually going to happen. I don't think Gaza will become the French Riviera. Maybe Atlantic City, but probably not the Riviera. But in all seriousness, it gives this expands the aperture for these governments to have a little more flexibility in how they're approaching the issue. And I think, and my guess is, once the doors closed, King Abdullah said to President Trump, "Thank you for doing that. You're giving us better options going forward for what we're going to have to do with respect to the Palestinians." So this shaking things up, even on the hostage deal, kind of laying down a deadline of Saturday, really is going to allow for people to maneuver to different positions that in the long run will be better.
So, Jess, one thing I'm curious about, how do you feel like this ties into the halting of foreign aid. Is there a connection here? Was this part of the strategy?
I think we joke, Les brings up 3D chess on the part of administrations. I'm not sure I see a 3D chess move. I think it's interesting. I think Morgan and Les talked about, especially Les, about the flexibility this Trump's proposal for Gaza gives to Arab states. I kind of question that. You see, massive pushback from their own population. So I'm not sure who the flexibility is coming from. Is it they're just they're the leaders of these states, or is it doesn't seem like it's giving flexibility with the people on the ground whose opinion they actually have to care about at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And I think, as we do updates on this story, sometimes I feel like I'm kind of along just for the ride, honestly. And I think that's what some of these world leaders must be feeling like. If you watch the video of, the king and President Trump talking, he's kind of sitting there like a little worried about what's coming next, right? And there's kind of bantering from President Trump about whether they'll cut off, aid. And he's like, oh, no, we won't. We would never do that. Or, we wouldn't threaten people with money, as we impose tariffs kind of across the world. And so it's a little scary, I think, if you're the king sitting there, whether or not your kind of life support and critical resources are a little bit of a bantering talking point. And so I think you have a lot of folks sitting and waiting. You mentioned the Arab League meeting later this month. And I'm thinking, meeting later this month, I think you guys need to come up with a unified plan a lot quicker than that if you want to give President Trump a win enough that he doesn't begin to move forward with whether or not this is a serious proposal or not.
Yeah, Martha, I'd like to sort of chime in here on the back of Jessica and talking about sort of the Arab street, so to speak, and the role that the significance that that it has with respect to this crisis. And that is, we see Saudi Arabia, a country that has fed its people a diet of hate of Israel, of Jews, that is starting to sort of shift. MBS has really started to tamp down on the extremism in his country, but it's not there yet, right? We're still seeing this institutional anti-Semitism and hatred of the Israeli state. In Jordan, clearly, Palestinians have had a significant presence there. Egypt, obviously, is no stranger to the Arab-Israeli crisis. I would note, though, that Jordan and Egypt in particular are no stranger to mass demonstrations and even coups. The leaders ultimately know that that is their vulnerability, right? And they know that if they go too far here, it could result in widespread trouble for their reigns. So I think that is an important point that Jess raises that we should keep in mind here as we factor in how these leaders respond to Trump's proposals.
Right, which would be problematic for the United States if these leaders who we work with and depend on are in a precarious situation.
One other thing, Martha, to respond to something Joan said. The reason it's what Trump is doing is beneficial to Arab leaders is because it gives them something to say no to, right? Clearly, the U.S. is not going to go in and occupy Gaza. But him just saying that gives them something to push back against, and that gives them the flexibility to say yes to something else.
Interesting.
It's not 3D chess. It's regular chess.
And one last question before we wrap things up. Do we think this ultimatum will have an effect? What's going to happen? What is the fate of the hostages? Morgan? Lester?
I think it will only help the hostage situation, which was not great to begin with. And I think this will focus people's efforts on trying to get to a better situation in the next, as we're recording this, 74 and a half hours.
Yeah, I perhaps unsurprisingly, I agree with Les here. I don't know that we will see all of the, all of the hostages released on Saturday, but I think we will see some efforts, good faith efforts to do so. Frankly, I don't know if the Palestinians, have Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, who has kept some of these hostages and may still be keeping some of the hostages. I don't know if they can get their act together, in 74 hours to actually deliver. But I think that this is it's a motivating factor.
Agree with those two.
Well, here we are again. We have, President Trump has started a conversation. He has forced people to evaluate ideas and solutions. to propose something that is actually within the realm of reasonable in the face of something that is, by many accounts, outlandish. We will be watching the coming days. We will be watching closely what comes of this ultimatum and the decisions and solutions that the Arab League puts forward. This is far from over, and we will convene again, I'm sure, very soon to discuss this very topic again. Thanks very much to Kelly Crowley, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help producing today's episode. Join us on Friday, February 14th. It'll be Valentine's Day for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. We're now on YouTube, so check out our channel and watch the video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.